anyone can be disciplined because no one is inherently disciplined, but the greats do self-discipline differently. In this video, we'll see how, and if you don't just passively binge our content, but actively try to implement it in your life, you'll be on the path to the iron will of titans, not the dutiful mediocrity that passes for discipline among the mass of mortals. Discipline is a much shiftier concept than it appears. Often what passes for discipline is just slavish adherence to rigid mental models, rote formulas that might get us the grade or the job in middle management, but will actively prevent us from becoming great innovators, disruptors, and leaders. On the other hand, true greatness is far from effortless, but it requires higher forms of discipline. As you watch this video, challenge yourself to break out of simplistic black and white mental frameworks in which you are either disciplined or lazy, destined for greatness or doomed to mediocrity. Breaking these limiting mental frameworks is the first step towards building the self-discipline of an Elon Musk, not that of a joyless grind clinging to a mid-level cubicle with all his strength until he can finally let it all go and spend his last years wasting away in Margaritaville. Apparent lack of conventional discipline is often the precursor to greatness. Before he went on to revolutionize science, Charles Darwin dropped out of college not once but twice and was seen as an idle dandy by his father and other authority figures in his life. His fascination with the natural world wasn't easily channeled into good grades at medical school and was viewed as unserious until it produced his revolutionary insights. Why I'm lazy isn't an excuse for why you can't develop discipline. The implicit assumption behind this negative self-talk is that some just are lazy while others just have iron wills. This is a fixed mindset, a limiting belief. The definition of discipline is that it's not natural or easy to anyone. So what allows some people to master themselves while others never do? Do successful people just hold the whip over themselves and never let themselves get away with anything? No. Going too hard on yourself and setting unreachable goals is a recipe for falling off the wagon. Know your limits. It's a marathon, not a sprint. If you need a constant cop in your head, it's because you lack intrinsic motivation. Constantly rediscovering your mission is better than becoming the cop in your own head. Extrinsic motivation, doing what others tell us and what wins us approval, is something we're conditioned to do in school, but it actually crowds out the subtler and more effective skill set of discovering and maintaining intrinsic motivation, our own inner desire to achieve things. Intrinsic motivation might look like seeking excitement, and it is, but it's different from mere hedonism. Hedonism is empty pleasure calories that come with a nasty sugar crash, while going after what truly excites you is pleasure superfood that charges you up to do more. Like most things, though, discipline requires you to hold contradictory ideas in your head at the same time, and any of the above points can lead you astray if taken in isolation. You have to force yourself to do even what you love sometimes. In fact, what you love can be the hardest thing to get started on because you have more of your self-image and self-worth tied up in it, hence more fear of failure. Likewise, if you're working on something for which you don't have much intrinsic motivation, often more gets done when you're not trying to discipline yourself in an overbearing way, but just allow yourself to be drawn into the task. Most tasks have their own inherent satisfactions, even boring ones no one exactly loves. Take doing the dishes or getting to inbox 0. In fact, one big risk that often gets missed when we talk about discipline is that many of us fritter away our lives not in quiet desperation as Thoreau feared, but in the bland satisfactions of busy work, or doing efficiently what should not be done at all, as Peter Drucker warned against, broken up with the bland distractions and pleasures of beer, football, Netflix, and Instagram. So you have to ruthlessly apply the yardstick of your true desires and goals to everything you do, or even the most sophisticated self-discipline hack can just lead you to become your own suck-up student, the teacher's pet who dutifully checks whatever inane box is put in front of him and only realizes he doesn't know who he is or what he wants to do with his life in that awkward moment right after graduation. The reality is, we all have to keep having those moments throughout life because society is always pulling us back to our desk and giving us little gold stars for doing whatever crap it wants done. If you want to stay disciplined for the long haul, you need to hack your own weaknesses and turn them in your favor. Making life's big lifts with willpower alone is like lifting with your upper body alone, the weakest part of your musculature, just as your lately evolved forebrain is the weakest part of your neurology. To maintain discipline over the long haul, you need to develop the muscle memory to always lift with your quads whenever possible. The neuropsychological equivalent of the quads, your strongest muscles, is your ancient mammalian and reptilian reward systems. The reason advertisers cynically target these instead of the weaker rationality is because they know rewards for discipline and need to make the unhealthy pleasures feel bad. How do you do this? Figure out what hole these things are filling and address it. Accept your shame about whatever it is. Pursue pain rather than running from it. Of course, you won't do this if you try to brute force yourself toward the pain with willpower, weak upper body. You need algorithms and guardrails you've set up. When you've put yourself on a track with enough wiggle room, you won't derail at the slightest bump, but still a pretty straight and narrow track, and made sure it's actually taking you somewhere you want to go, then you're working with your nature, not against it. Discipline isn't all about denial and being at war with yourself. You have to become your own coach, not your own drill sergeant. Self-compassion is a necessary complement, or you end up in an all-or-nothing mindset prone to falling off the wagon or burnout. Understand that you're weak and accept it. Accept that you feel shame about it sometimes, but also realize that shame is often counterproductive because it's painful and you will usually seek to avoid it with numbing distractions which reinforce the shame and low self-esteem in a doom loop. Without years of therapy and Zen meditation, and even with them, you're going to need to set clever traps for your own brain. You're going to have to trick yourself into doing what you claim to want, like writing your friend a check for $2,000 they can cash if you ever take a drag on another death stick. Here's a cheaper one. Get yourself into groups that do disciplined things. We're all addicts of some kind, and as AA and religion found out long ago, social pressure is way more powerful than individual willpower, so leverage it in your favor. Groups also help build neural pathways that associate rewards with doing the right thing. Good dog. Like food and socializing. Why do you think religious institutions almost always give you those things after you do your spiritual disciplines of praying, sitting in hard pews, etc.? It goes for irreligious people too. Let's say I avoid working on my novel edits because they're overwhelming and there's no external deadline. Let's say I then go on Meetup and find a writing group at a local cafe. Not one of those snarky critique groups, mind you, but a group where writers just sit down together and write for 50-minute sprints with coffee and chat breaks in between. That's hacking the brain by breaking the task up into manageable, bounded, intense chunks with peer pressure and social food, coffee reinforcement. If I start going religiously every week, those edits suddenly start making progress even outside the group times because success breeds success. Groups are rare in our age of isolation, what sociologist Robert Putnam famously called bowling alone. And he was writing before smartphones and social media were a thing. But humans evolved to do hard things together most of the time. Solitary vision quests are a sometimes food, as latter-day teacher's pet cookie monster put it. Go find yourself some accountability partners and make sure there are cookies and coffee. While those small pleasures can morph into monster distractions and addictions when you're all alone with them, in company they are tame and useful workhorses, pulling your weak forebrain toward where it claims to want to go. And once it starts getting there and seeing the scenery and notching the title wins, it wants to go there more. But it only works if you do those solitary vision quests off into the desert, or wherever, at least a few times a year to make sure those strong, tame horses are still pulling you down a track you want to be on.